Good day. Today we will be looking at demand, supply and prices. But for today, we are going to focus on demand. As we saw in the previous video of interdependence, we saw that there's different role players. We have firms and households and the foreign sector and the financial sector. But today we are focusing on the firms and the households because the firms are the supply curve and demand is the households. So those two talk to one another. The firms produce, that is your supply curve, and then your consumers consume, and that's the demand curve. So let's look at demand in a little bit more detail. So here is the definition of demand. So I want to ask you, this is my phone. It's a Samsung Galaxy S10. Who wants it? And I bet there's a few of you that will raise your hand and say, I want the phone. But does that mean there's demand for the phone if there is 100 people wanting the phone? No, there's no demand then. Demand only exists if you give me 10,000 Rand, which is what this phone is worth, for the phone. Then you can buy the phone, because then you have the resources to buy the phone and you are willing to buy and able to buy the phone. Only then demand exists. So that's a little bit of a tricky one. So keep an eye out for that in the exam. So let's look at the demand curve. So a demand curve, you always have prices on your y-axis and quantities on your x-axis, and then you have your demand curve. Now you will notice that the demand curve is downward sloping. It means that it has a negative slope. This is because of the law of demand. The higher the price, the lower the quantity. The lower the price, the higher the quantity. So the cheaper the product, the more we want it. So at 1 Rand for a kilogram tomatoes, we want 6. At 2 Rand, we want 5. At 3 Rand, we want 4. At 4 Rand, we want 3. At 5 Rand, we want 2. So that is just the law of demand, just to give you an indication of what the demand curve looks like. But two things can happen with a demand curve. And this is very important. Let's just get a pen here. So, like I said, you have price on your y-axis and quantity on your x-axis. And then you have your demand curve. Now, the first thing that can happen to this curve is there is a movement on the curve. This is extremely important. So there's physically a movement on the curve. You're moving from one point to another. And this is only due to one thing, and that is if there is a change in the price. If price decreases or price increases, there is a movement on the curve, but only for a certain product. There's no additional story behind the question or anything. I just plain say that the price of tomatoes increased, or the price of berry decreased, or petrol price is going to increase due to an increase in the oil price. And so that just an increase in the price of one product, that will cause an movement on the curve, which will be influenced by then a change of quantity demanded. Because if we say the price decreased, then we will see there's an increase in quantity demanded. So there's a change in quantity demanded. That is the difference. So there's only one curve, and it's along the curve. And again, it's only the price of the product, nothing else, just the price. That brings us to the second thing that can happen to the curve. There is a movement of the curve. So again, you have price, you have quantity, and you have the demand curve. And then things can happen to this curve. It can either move to the right or it can move to the left. If it moves to the right, it means there is an increase in demand. If it moves to the left, it means there is a decrease in demand. Now, there can be an increase in demand or a decrease in demand only if one of the four determinants is involved. So either the income of the consumer is involved. So I get a raise and my demand for steers increase. Okay. Taste and consumer preferences. So I only want to buy Guess jeans lately, so the demand for Guess jeans will increase. the size of the consumer households. For instance, I get 5 children. My household is definitely bigger. I will have to buy more food. So my demand for food will increase. Then we have the price of the related products. This includes your complementary goods and your substitutes. So your complementary goods is that the one good can't go without the other. There are complementary goods. And the substitute goods is the one product is just as good as the other product. So complementary goods, the one cannot go without the other, like toothpaste or toothbrush, and substitute is there's more than one good that is the same. So for instance, if you want a TV bar and there's no TV bar chocolates, then you take a Nosh chocolate. A chocolate is a chocolate. So it's going to give you the same level of satisfying abilities, one product than the other. So that is it. So there's your demand curve, downward sloping. Two things can happen. There's a movement on the curve, which is occurred if there's a change in price, and then the movement of the curve either to the left or right due to one of the determinants: income, taste and preferences, size of the household, complements and substitutes. Right, let's go in more detail in the next video.